in this professional communications course, and we're talking about meetings. Now, this particular session is going to be talking about the written documents that you need to have for these meetings. So by the end of this session, you should understand what we mean by a notice of a meeting. You'll understand how to compile an agenda and what it all means, and you'll have some idea about how to write minutes. So there's quite a lot to get through, so let's jump straight in and get into this session about written documents required. Now the whole point is that it tells participants that a meeting is going to take place. Obviously you're going to have to tell them the date of the meeting, you're going to tell them the time at which the meeting will be held, and where it's going to be held. That is the room number and the building that it's going to be in. One thing to note is that that's pretty straightforward, that it's the date, the time, and the place. But sometimes if it's outside a particular building where most people work, and it can be another place, you need to tell people the information on that location. You may need to give them directions. You may need to give them something like a postcode or whatever address system the country you're in uses to locate somewhere. Where I live, for instance, we have a very specific postcode which relates to only 2, 3, or 4 houses, so it's very easy to pinpoint where someone is. So you can use SatNav or Google Maps or anything like that to find it. But then once you get to a particular building, you need to know the room number and how to get into it. You may want to include public transport information, where the nearest station is, or if something's on a bus route, if people don't drive, or you're in the middle of a city and it's not so easy to drive to somewhere and park up and so on. So you need to give exact ideas of where places are and the time and date of a meeting. If it's going to be a long meeting, it's worth telling people the estimated time that you think it'll end, because people have commitments to their families. For instance, they may have childcare issues, they may have issues about caring for other people. There's all sorts of personal things which come in. And if it's going to be a long meeting, say all-day meeting, which can happen, you need to tell people whether food and drink will be provided or whether they really have to think about bringing that themselves. So again, the information, you don't need huge amounts, but enough to have everybody informed. So the notice of the meeting then will also tell people whether any other relevant information is required or whether copies will be provided. So you can tell them whether copies are provided or whether people need to bring identification and so on, because occasionally you'll need your company pass or your company identification to get into a building and so on. So you need to think about that as well.
Hello guys, screen पे double tap करिए.
The agenda. Well, how do you compile an agenda? Well, the agenda, as we said,
जिन्होंने स्क्रीन पे डबल टैप नहीं किया है, स्क्रीन पे डबल टैप कीजिए. और जिन्होंने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है, वो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब भी करें.
But you need to think about talking to the chair of the meeting, who should be consulted regarding the content of the meeting. That's always very helpful. That is assuming that the person who's going to chair the meeting has already been appointed. You can invite input from participants when you
जिन्होंने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और स्क्रीन पे डबल टैप करें.
To say if anybody has particular items they wish to add.
और कौन-कौन लाइव में है, कमेंट भी करें.
Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So give them a deadline and consider what you need to address. What is the meeting about? You've ascertained that. So what agenda
पलक उज्जवल को इन्फॉर्म कर दो.
Put into that meeting so as the areas that you want to cover are covered. You need to plan individual tasks and who will lead each topic. If it's just
आदर्श पीयूष को भी मैसेज कर दो.
But if somebody is an expert in a particular
लाइव से जुड़ने के लिए.
And you want to discuss that, you will say this person will lead that topic. And you
स्क्रीन पे डबल टैप कीजिए स्क्रीन पे. जो लाइव से जुड़े हुए हैं.
Time that needs to be spent on each topic. Make sure you allow enough, but don't go over the top. Otherwise, your meeting will last all day and into the next, and you really don't want that to happen. So it's always helpful to remember the 4 Ps. What is the purpose of the meeting? What is the product that you wish to discuss?
जो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किए हैं, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर दीजिए.
You're going to be involving, and what process are you going to undertake to make sure the meeting runs smoothly? What you need to include in an agenda then is the name of the meeting, if it has that. Monthly meeting to discuss management issues, monthly meeting to discuss staffing, weekly meeting on business progress, whatever it is. So now you have a name of the meeting. You include on your agenda and in the title the name of the meeting.
Screen पे double tap करें.
On whatever and at whatever time, in whatever location. So you include that as the title piece of your agenda, and you put in it meeting held to discuss X, Y, and Z, the objectives of the meeting. Then there is a particular order of the meeting, and you include this in the agenda. You have opening comments, and that's usually the welcome. Hello everybody, welcome to this meeting. It's very nice to see you. My name is whatever it is, and I'll be chairing the meeting. Then you go into apologies for absence. That is the first thing that you go into. Who is unable to attend? And usually it's courtesy that they send a message to the person sending out the notice of the meeting to say, I'm sorry, I can't attend. The next agenda item is the minutes. We'll be talking about minutes in a little bit more detail later, but that is the record of the last meeting. What was said, what was decided, who was going to carry out different things. Matters arising come out of the minutes, and you usually put matters arising and not appearing in this agenda. So if you
guys स्क्रीन पे डबल टैप क्यों नहीं कर रहे हैं आप लोग?
We're expecting to
इतने सारे लोग लाइव में जुड़ रहे हैं लेकिन एक ही लाइक आया है.
Another country. More details there to follow. That could be a matter arising because you want to pick up on it and you want people to discuss what's happened. Then you have the list of the subjects you want to discuss. It'll be such as this development, this problem, this issue which has arisen with staffing, whatever. Then you come to something which is called any other business, and you have to be careful here because any other business is a free-for-all, really. It's what somebody wants to raise, and the chairman of the meeting really has to be very careful because if it's not relevant, you have to knock it back. But any other business can be anything as simple as, oh, I'm sure people would like to know that we had a celebration last week for somebody who had been 25 years in the same role in this company. It's not particularly relevant to the meeting, but it's just something that you want to add because it might be interesting. And then you give the date and time of the next meeting if there is one. So that's what you need to include in an agenda. If you want to see agendas, there will be plenty of sample agendas which you can look up online. Now, the minutes of a meeting, this is the formal document which detailed what happens in a meeting.
आज उज्जवल नहीं है तो कमेंट में कोई ज़्यादा कमेंट कर नहीं रहा है कमेंट बॉक्स में खाली ही जाएगा.
You can work out who's doing what and who's saying what and what they intend to do, and it acts as a project guide. It guides you through what you're intending to do in the meeting, and it tells you what issues you're looking at. It also saves time. People aren't scratching their heads thinking, what did I say? Should I have done this? And what
डबल टैप कीजिए स्क्रीन पे.
Ownership. It gives the ownership of the content to that particular committee, and people can accept that what they need to do is stated in here.
हेलो उज्जवल, तब से तुम्हारा ही कमी था, कहाँ थे?
Its venue and the date and time of the meeting, which you will get from the top of the agenda.
राम राम.
You put a list of participants who was there.
डबल टैप करो पहले.
Order names, whatever you like, and then you put apologies for absence. You put the people who weren't there.
Okay,
You
okay.
list the purpose, and then you give in the old agenda that you had for the meeting about which the minutes are written. You put the headings there and you put brief details of the discussion
दिव्या
and
कहाँ है
any
दिव्या
decisions made.
उसको भी
Also
बोलो
include action points, the person tasked with carrying out something which you've decided within the whole discussion. And finally, you put the date, time, and place for the next meeting if you know it. If you don't, you say date, time, and place to be decided. You sometimes include supporting documents, reports, necessary items for people to be able to discuss matters further. So how do you write the minutes? Well, you prepare. You need to contact the chairperson and you need to know the agenda. So you need to make contact with the person who's going to be in charge of the meeting and make sure that you know what's coming up so you're ready to write the
अरे
minutes.
उज्जवल डल गया है
You
मिनी
need to take
ब्लॉग
records.
देखो मेरा
That
फेसबुक
could be the
आईडी भी
date,
है
time,
उस
and
पे
location of
तो
the
देखते
meeting,
ही नहीं हो
who's present,
देख रहे हो
go for
4.5 के
apologies,
फॉलोअर्स हैं
and then you need to
मोनेटाइज हो गया मेरा
list
फेसबुक का पेज
brief outlines of the discussion.
कहाँ
Unless
रह
it is
रहे हो
something
तुम
where you are required to write detailed minutes and you have to do the whole thing in quite considerable
डेली कर रहे हैं ब्रो
detail.
डेली
And then you think about any decisions made, any elections that were held, the outcomes, what the results were, what the outcomes of any discussions are, and if somebody is tasked to do something, you put action points and you put their name by the action point, and that reminds them to do something and report back next time. You should give the time and location of the next meeting if you really be brief and shouldn't really be aware
के नाम से है
you are
फेसबुक
asked
पेज
to do that. Try to use shorthand if you can, or brief
4.5
notes,
के
or
फॉलोअर्स है
record
मेरे
the meeting.
वहाँ पे
There's plenty of
मोनेटाइज भी हो गया
systems
मेरा
now which
पेज
will
और
transcribe what you
अब
write.
इंस्टाग्राम पे
They are
व्यू
pretty
थोड़ा
effective
बहुत
and
पहले
they're
से
getting
बेटर
better
हुआ है लेकिन
all the
अभी
time.
फॉलोअर्स नहीं है
If you're
और
writing
ना
your
ही
notes up,
यूट्यूब पे है
from
यूट्यूब पे लोगों को बुलाना पड़ रहा है
do it
लाइव
quickly,
आओ
otherwise
लाइव
detail
आओ
gets quickly forgotten. Always remember when you're writing them,
4 सब्सक्राइबर बढ़ते हैं तो 6 माइनस हो जा रहे हैं
distribute the
आजकल
information promptly with key documents that need to be distributed, attached if there are any, and send it out not within 3, 4, 5 weeks of meeting, within a day or so. That's what you need to do. So there we have it. That's the documentation that you need to send out for a meeting. By this point, you should now know how to write a notice of a meeting. You know how to compile an agenda, and you've got some idea of how to write minutes. Again, take a look at the background information that is attached within the references section of this piece. That will help you understand even more. I hope that was informative to you, and thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
नेक्स्ट सेशन लगा रही हूँ आई थिंक ये कल वाला ही लगा दिया है बाय मिस्टेक मैंने
Hello again, it's Dr. Gilmore Hughes here with you.
क्या करूँ इसका साउंड ही इतना है फुल वॉल्यूम है देखो ध्यान से सुनो
To the point where we're going to be thinking about online meetings. This has become a very, very big thing as a result of all sorts of issues around how life has gone in the last decade or so. We'll be looking then in this session at how online meetings came about really and how they grew and how they became more important.
डबल टैप करो स्क्रीन पे
The importance of this particular area, and also how online meetings work in practice.
फुल वॉल्यूम कर लो उसके बाद तुमको सुनाई देगा
I'm sure that's something we will look at in some detail. So I said that online meetings became something of a phenomenon really, and that came about because of lockdown really. But let's think about how they evolved. There were things called telephone conference calls, and this is where you could have a call where several people could be on the line at the same time. And this could be as many as 15 or 20 people. For example, I was part of conference calls frequently in press offices at the BBC. The problem was you had 15 or 20 people all on the same call, and people could start talking at once because you didn't see anybody. They became incredibly unwieldy, they became very difficult to control, and people often talked over each other, and you get this embarrassing thing where several people
अब दिख रहा
spoke,
होगा
and
आई
they realized
थिंक
they were speaking at each other, and then they stopped, there
क्लियरली
was silence, and they were very, very difficult
बताओ
to control.
कमेंट में भाई
But it was the beginning of online meetings. Improved telecommunications then began to
डबल टैप कर दो स्क्रीन पे जिन्होंने
produce
नहीं
what
किया
is
है
called
और
teleconferencing,
चैनल को सब्सक्राइब भी
where
करें
you would have
जिन्होंने नहीं किया है
television
सब्सक्राइब
link
अब तक
over telephone lines and so on. The problem was that people had to travel to a teleconferencing centre. It was very helpful in rural communities where it was difficult to get to places. You had to travel a long way. The roads weren't very good. Public transport was probably almost non-existent. But nevertheless, people still had to travel to a studio. You had to book the studio well in advance because the demand was very heavy. And while it saved on travel costs and people's time, they were highly expensive to use. So it was, again, something which was useful at the time, but has outlived its usefulness. As a result of the evolution of broadband and the advances in broadband capability have made online meetings a lot easier. There is new software coming out all the time, and new and improved software makes it very easy. And the COVID pandemic, as I've referred to before, changed the worldwide acceptance of online meetings. These days, a large people at WFH work from home, and there's quite a backlash against that in many ways, because there's a bit of a mental problem that people don't see each other, and they feel lonely, and they're sort of working in this rather strange one-on-one environment. But the great thing about online meetings is they're easy to set up. You don't require a room, you don't have to get a room booked and so on. All you do is send a few emails around to say, are you available for a meeting on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning? And people say yes, no, whatever. It's pretty cheap to run. Software is not expensive. Indeed, some of them are personal use. It's free to use the software, and if you want to go above 40 minutes on Zoom, for instance, you pay for the better service. But nevertheless, you can meet people for 40 minutes free. And the big thing, of course, it saves on travel costs. It saves on time. If it's saving on time, it means that people are perhaps doing something else with their time. And the great thing is it can involve people worldwide. The thought of travelling, flying for hours on end to get to somewhere, to have a meeting with somebody and then come back again, well, it's largely gone. Still happens in some cases, but largely it's gone. So online meetings have evolved into this very slick and very helpful operation. So the effective things you've got to do to make it work, you've got to think about your surroundings, you've got to think about noise or background or lighting. You need to create an agenda and circulate that agenda in advance, just like you would for another meeting. You need to turn off things like notifications on the computer or on the phone and so on. And you need to have a facilitator, a chairperson effectively, the person who controls the meeting, because otherwise online meetings can quickly drift off subject because people start chatting, mainly because they don't see each other in person. Therefore, they catch up on the social aspect of these things. You need to look at the camera when you're speaking, and also have appropriate clothing and body language. Remember, we talked about before on this particular module. But the thing is, when you're at home, you are tempted to look rather unprofessional, really. But you need to dress up a bit for a formal meeting because you are in the workspace. Still, you also need to think very carefully about using clear speech and facial expressions. So remember how we talked quite a lot about non-verbal communication, and that's what you wear, how you wear it, the gestures you make, the facial expressions you make. They're equally important. In fact, even more important, because people are looking at you on the screen rather than in a room from a distance. So they're seeing every little bit of you. Choosing the right software, of course, is important, and that can vary from place to place, but it's often useful to talk to your IT specialists. Get as high a quality as you can, and make sure that it's as good as it gets, really, if it's for a professional workplace use. Make sure that it has sufficient security and encryption so people can't hack into it and make life a misery, and make sure that you have recording options, because it is useful frequently to record these meetings. You can use a mobile app, of course, which is great because that does mean that you can be out and about, so you don't have to be sitting at your computer at home. Remember that you can share screens as well, so people can see what it is that you're reading or something that you're looking at, or a document you're looking at on your computer. You can share that with somebody else. The thing to do as well is to use the integrated calendar that is often available on the online
हेलो दिव्या, बढ़िया चल रहा है।
software. Because that
नहीं
way
उज्जवल, मैं यहाँ
you
पे
can
नहीं
share
थी।
your calendar with somebody else and with all the participants in the
पढ़ ही
meeting.
रही थी,
And
लेकिन
they'll
अभी
get
थोड़ी देर के लिए
how
बाहर
to
गई
log
थी।
into the meeting itself, the meeting identifiers, and so on. Sometimes for people who are either shy and don't like using camera, don't like seeing themselves on camera, or actually don't have it, there can be a dial-in option on these meetings where somebody can participate on a phone line. It's a bit of a throwback in a sense, because it's a bit like being on one of those conference calls, but it is available. And you need to check as well whether auto launch is available. Is where the meeting sets itself up for you, or do you have to go and set it up and then open the meeting to everybody else that's involved? So choosing the right software is important, and it is well worth having a chat with the guys in your IT operation. So there we are. That gives you a bit of an idea of how to run an online meeting and how to set it up. It's perfectly simple. I have to say, I never thought that I'd get into it, but I have. It's a pretty easy option to run. So I hope you now understand how the online meeting has developed, and also about how things tend to work in practice. As always, there's always plenty to read up on that. I hope that's of interest, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much. ये सब भी देख लो एक बारी। जो लाइव से जुड़े हुए हैं, और आप लोगों ने कमेंट में लास्ट वाले वीडियो नहीं कि कौन सा क्विज सही था, कौन सा गलत था। क्लियरली दिख रहा होगा। वर्चुअल टीम मीटिंग्स, वीडियो कॉन्फ्रेंसेस, आई डोंट नो गाइस, रिकनेक्टिंग क्यों हो रहा है। ट्रेनिंग सेशन, सर्वर का कुछ इशू है, इस वजह से सही से चल नहीं रहा है। अगेन क्विज़, ये तो मैं सॉल्व कर चुकी हूँ, लेकिन आप लोग बताइए कमेंट बॉक्स में कि इसका राइट आंसर क्या होगा। पलक बताओ तुम। कमेंट बॉक्स में। 2 नहीं हो। चलो एक बार ट्राई करके देखते हैं, सेकंड ऑप्शन भी मिलता है, करेक्ट है। दोनों ने सही बताया। लगता है और कोई लाइव के लिए सिर्फ आता है, लाइव ऑन करके चला जाता है। गाइस अगर लाइव हो तो फिर यहाँ पे अवेलेबल भी रहो कमेंट बॉक्स में, वरना मत आओ मेरे लाइव में। इसका आंसर क्या होगा? What is meant by auto launch? ओके तृप्ति 1। बाकी और कोई नहीं कर रहा कमेंट? चेक कर लेते हैं। हाँ, दोनों का गलत है गाइस। आप लोगों ने गलत आंसर बताया, दोनों के दोनों। ओके गाइस, टाटा बाय बाय, गुड नाइट, शुभ रात्रि। मैं जा रही हूँ बाकी का पढ़ाई करने, और आप लोग जिन लोगों ने चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है वो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, और मेरे शॉर्ट्स वीडियो को देखें, लाइक करें, कमेंट करें, और चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, शेयर करें। थैंक यू, टाटा बाय बाय, गुड नाइट।